All right, Charlie, I have 11:33. You want to go ahead and get the show on the road?
We'll do it.
No pun intended with your current situation.
I am sitting in a parking lot at McDonald's in Versailles. I was at a doctor's appointment this morning in Lexington. Didn't have time to get back. Doctor's office is always running late. But anyway, I'm sitting here. I feel like a student trying to do their homework virtually because they don't have Wi-Fi at home. So anyway, that's why I look like I look today. I want to welcome Bryan McFarland. I like Bryan because I got my start in communications and radio, and I've always thought that the world is a better place because of public radio, and I can't wait to hear him talk. Before I turn it over to him, we do have a few announcements. We have a little thing called the award ceremony that's coming up, and I know Dave Davis was going to send out a registration, if you will, so we know how many lunches to buy and that. Still waiting to see, though, is the governor or is the legislature going to curtail any activity like this? We hope not. But if they do, then that means out at the Sauer building, we may not have a room to go to. So we're just having to wait and see what's going to play out with these high Delta numbers. So if we're not able to meet in person, what we have to do is just do it on Zoom, because I want to congratulate people and I want everybody to see who has done what. So it's frustrating, I know, and already we've had to make our fall conference not in person. We had sent out an email saying we're going to get back together this year. And at the time we said it, we thought we were, but things aren't going that right direction. So there's been a lot of changes. This has been a trying time to be a nonprofit organization. I don't care what business you're in. That said, we have a few members that are going to be leaving the administration this year. Terms are up. I'm for one of them. Dave Davis, who's in charge of programs, is another. I think we have 3 or 4 openings. And one of the best things that happened to me, and Lisa Tolliver is on this call today, is that she showed me that people believe in me. What she did by doing that is she nominated me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have really probably stepped up to say, yeah, I'll be your administrative vice president and I'll be your president. But because somebody said, I believe in you, I know how you act, I know how you function, I've seen you at work, I think you'd be pretty good at this. And I want you members to be thinking, if you don't want to nominate yourself and step up, think about somebody you work with, who have worked on a project together, or you've seen them work under fire, under stress. You know how organized they are. Maybe it's somebody who has deserved a promotion at work, but for whatever was overlooked. Maybe this is an opportunity to bolster their ego and use their enthusiasm for good things. I want you to think about people you know and you work with, and contact David, contact me, contact Regina Stratton, that, hey, I want to nominate this person for a position. Or you can nominate yourself, and we'll be glad to reach out to them and say, well, here's what it involves. And I would like to see this done in the next few weeks, because we need to get a board together. There needs to be an election, but too many people are leaving, and I don't want to see this organization have to fold. I just don't want to see that. I don't think that will happen, but we do need new members to step up and keep this thing going now in like its 4th decade. So that said, think about that. We need people to nominate other people, if not yourself. So Bryan McFarland is up, and I'm pretty sure Dave Davis has a better introduction for Bryan than I do. David?
Excellent. Thank you, Charlie. So yes, I would like to introduce Bryan McFarland today with Kentucky Public Radio. He is a native of Kentucky, born and raised in Campbellsville. He attended the University of Kentucky. He was a partner in Breeding's nightclub in Lexington after college, and he spent many years selling construction and mining equipment in Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Alabama, West Virginia. He came back to Kentucky in '95 with his sister and his brother-in-law, and they built and operated a commercial station in Campbellsville, WVLC 99.9 FM, the big dog. He sold the station in 2006. He then worked in medical sales before returning to radio with the Kentucky Public Radio Network in 2017. So he is going to talk to us today about public radio and the benefits and such. So everybody, thank you for joining us. Let's give a big hand and a warm welcome to Bryan. Bryan, the floor is yours. And I will bring up the PowerPoint. And everybody should be seeing it. Bryan, it is all yours. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you all. This is one of the organizations that I belong to that I enjoy the most. And that's was in thinking about it, I just wanted to, it's not going to be a sales pitch at all. I just wanted you all to be aware as government communicators, as you already know, how much the game has changed with COVID and everything else that's happened in the last 24 months. Almost every media has become more fragmented as people have more opportunities to get information and entertainment. And for us, it's been fortunate. We spent decades, public radio has, becoming a trusted source for information and news. And if you all watch your local news, which I do, I think when I was in college, they talked about yellow journalism. Now I hear people talking about yellow tape journalism, where it's a lot more economical for a TV station to send a reporter out with a camera on a tripod, and they get in front of some yellow tape with some flashing lights, and they read you the police report, and then there's no more, they can't afford or won't do any more in depth on what the news is. We spend a lot of time and a lot of effort on getting deeper into the news. Our news organization in Louisville has over 30 full-time employees. They won a Peabody Award in 2017, and our Center for Investigative Reporting just had one of their stories make the front page of the Times. So we've been doing it kind of the old-fashioned way, and fortunately for us, it's starting to come back in for us. And you can change that, David, if you would, please. And I'm not going to read these things to you all, that you all can. David says he's going to be kind enough to put a link up. But we just got our Nielsen report in the last 60 days for an entire year of COVID. It was March 20 to March 21. And public radio has the biggest audience out there for high income, highly educated decision makers. And I think what work most for government communicators is our folks are influencers. They're very involved in volunteering and civic engagement. No, next slide, please. And over 600,000 Kentuckians tune into our network each week. And our network is made up of 13 stations statewide. And to kind of prove how much it does to us, proves how much our listeners value us, we had over $7.8 million donated to the stations last year from our audience. And they're paying us for something that's free. Next slide, please. And a big thing in advertising now is people talk about the Halo effect and trust. 89% of the folks that listen to us surveyed say they trust us, and 80% plus are loyal to the people and take action from the folks that they hear on public radio. Next. And what we do best is get to a large audience with favorable and give them favorable education for your services and your information. I know a lot of folks, you folks listen to public radio. Our spots are never produced. They're always live reads. The FCC limits us. We can't have calls to actions. We can't say anything's for sale. And it sounds like a handicap, but it's not, because it cuts through the clutter and it gets our message across better. Next, please. And this is just a sampling of the folks that have, of companies and organizations that have worked with us in the past year. Next, please. And we reach all 120 counties. I think on the next slide, there's a coverage map. There's one little piece up in Northeast Kentucky there that we wanted to be fair. And I know Charlie said he spent time in radio. There's different rings that you can put on what your coverage map is. And what we're showing here is our where you can really hear us great. Your seek button will find us. But those folks up in the Northeast corner too, they can hear WEKU stations. But we wanted to be fair with it. But we get we're the only broadcast entity in the state that has that kind of coverage outside of KET. Next, please. This is a page that was just that's in there. It's more for business folks, but that's just underlines again that our audience is above the national average in income and education. Next, please. That's another about the upscale consumer. The right-hand column shows what our internet, what we're reaching on internet now. And on the internet thing, I just read an article this morning. It's kind of on this subject. I know that a lot of us have been looking to digital marketing and to get our information out these days. I read an article this morning that digital ad fraud will pass credit card fraud in the United States this year. Something like $355 million. There are companies out there that are using computers to make clicks on your website or your web information. So it's been more and more confusing. But next slide, please. And this is where I think you folks come in. Where we get through the people that are influencers in the civic area. Our folks vote. We have a large number of state and local federal government officials and employees that work with us. Our folks donate to who they work with, and they volunteer. In the thing where I think it helps most with government communication, like the program we did with COVID vaccines, our folks are trusted by their friends as a source for information. Next slide, please. Our folks travel. They're big in continuing education. Next, David. They're early adapters of technology and are very curious and learning folks. Next, please. That's some demographics if you all want to look at. It just shows a breakdown of kind of our audience. It trends a little bit male. It's not really a 50-50 split as I would have thought, but we trend a little bit higher with male. And then you can see all the other things. But next, please. And this is just showing again what the trust that our listeners have in us. Next, please, David. And this shows our markets and my contact information. It actually shows we have stations in Bowling Green, Corbin, Elizabethtown, Hazard, Henderson, Owensboro, Louisville, Murray, Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, Pineville, Richmond, Lexington, Somerset. And actually, when I typed this up, I left off WKMD, which covers Madisonville and Paducah. And the stations, some of these you can see are university-based within the Cincinnati, and the Louisville stations are not-for-profit organizations outside of the universities. But I just wanted to show you all that, and more than anything was just to have a chat with you and know that if you have some information or something that we can help you get out with, we can be another tool in your bag, and reach out to me at any time. And especially now, your all's work is becoming very, very important, and we just like to help. And if anybody has any questions or anything, I'd sure love to chat with you, because this was a kind of an informal deal. I didn't want to take up your whole day bragging about something you probably already got in your car.
I have questions, but if anybody else would like to go first, please do. Bryan, it's just you and me, but I have a question. Everybody knows what a commercial is. We see them on TV, hear them on the radio. Could you take a minute to define what public radio underwriting is versus commercial advertising? And let me follow up by saying, you say we cannot have calls to action. An example of that would be, hurry in this weekend to save 20%. But can you have a call to action for, say, get your vaccine now, wear your seatbelt, don't text and drive? These are all calls to action. But does a call to action only apply in public radio if it is associated with a dollar figure?
That's about, Charlie, that's about the best way to describe it. I know I tell my wife when I used to own my own station, if I had a few extra people screaming at you about refrigerators and cars that were on sale this weekend, then I'd had a successful week. And I had a tough time making the shift in my mind until I saw how effective it was. The FCC will allow us to do things that are in a public service nature. And we've done 2 huge campaigns with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services for COVID vaccinations. And we were able to talk about wash your hands, wear your mask, get your vaccine. The example you made with wear your seatbelt and don't text while you drive, those are things that we have also done. But they used to be really, really, really strict on public radio, but they have loosened up a little bit just for that very reason. And one thing that we always, about every spot that you hear, if you listen to us much, we will refer somebody to a website. So if it gets into a lot of things that we can't say, then, but we can direct them to that entity's website for more information.
But can you actually say, get your vaccine? That is a call to action. That's an order. Versus which is very much like, say, come by today.
We can, but we need to have a qualifier to where we say something like CDC says, wash your hands, wear a mask, or the name's escaping now, the Highway Safety Federation says that so many people's lives are saved by wearing seatbelts. We everything we have to say has to be qualified.
Gotcha.
We can't say anybody's best or biggest unless somebody else says it besides them. And it just I think gives us an air of credibility. It quite frankly causes a problem with ad agencies, because as you know from your background, agencies make a lot of their money on selling you production.
15%.
And we have no production. Yeah, we have no production cost because we can't have sound effects and bings and bangs and the things that we've all become accustomed to. And like I say, that was the toughest transition for me from the commercial side. Because when I started writing copy, I got my hand slapped numerous times because I had to change my way of thinking, and quite frankly, I think it's more effective what we do, because you're listening to a voice that you already trust and that you tuned into, and people get hollered at so many times. I used to have the figures on it, how many impressions a day that we get from the little ads they even put on your grocery cart now, to cars, billboards, internet, and it's overwhelming. And I think that our message cuts through a lot of clutter.
Any other questions for Bryan?
If you are attending today and want to unmute and ask a question, feel free to go ahead, or you can always type it into the chat, and I will make sure Bryan sees it, and we'll get the question answered.
Talk about cost again, if you haven't already, Bryan. Let's say we wanted to go to WHAS radio. God knows everybody listens to them and AMC and the Bull in Lexington, and there's some big stations that are automatic go-tos. How do we see cost compared to one of the big commercial stations versus a WUKY public radio? Is it more? Is it less? Comparable?
I can get you a spot that'll run statewide less than you can get one on the stations you mentioned.
That gets your attention.
It's I know at the last that, and I've not seen a rate card from those folks in the last year, but I know that at one time AMZ and HAS were about 300 for a drive time spot. For an ROS spot or random orders. When drive time, then it went up again. And I can get you a spot that'll run on all 13 of our stations. That same $300.
And the same day part.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. And actually, I keep talking about Louisville, and Louisville's the only market where Nielsen does as in-depth research as the big competitors have for us. Lexington, Bowling Green, the other stations that just Nielsen doesn't consider them large enough to do that in-depth research. But like our Louisville stations, there are 3 stations in Louisville, and you get all 3 if you do underwriting. And they beat the big boys in this last book during COVID, which is the first time it's ever happened. We actually had a 38 share, and that's unheard of. That's old network TV numbers.
Well, you need to be able to target your audience, and I would say that the National Public Radio audience is going to be different than, say, people who want to listen to country music.
Yeah, they are.
It's a different target audience.
But my station was country. That when I owned a station, we were country and NASCAR, and we knew who our audience was. This is not my term, but I've had ad agencies use this term. Public radio does not get any of the Bubba money. And if it's, and they think that's, well, one of them that they've mentioned that in particular is the dial 811 before you dig. They don't think our audience digs, but I would disagree.
Everybody digs.
It's kind of with me anyway, it was almost kind of an egotistical thing. I was listening to NPR, and I thought, if I'm sitting at a 4-way stop, I'm the smartest guy at the intersection because I'm the only one listening to NPR. When in truth, probably at least one other was, and maybe 2 more were listening.
my last question is, are you obligated to run this on a statewide basis, whatever you buy? Or if you just wanted to target one part of the state or a town, can you do
No,
that?
we break it down by market. You can do statewide or by market. Matter of fact, I'm doing working on a contract right now with a company that they want to do just Louisville for this campaign. So we do that quite frequently. I've got some banking customers that get really regionalized because they're not represented in all the markets. And we can actually do nationwide. I have the people like myself that I have contacts with in the other states, and especially with the tourism people. We have, Kentucky tourism needs to advertise in like a 6-mile driving radius, and the other states need to do that here.
Who else would like to talk to Bryan? Yeah, this is All Things Considered, and that type of programming from public radio, which is exceptional across the dial. So feel free to ask Bryan a question for you to turn him loose.
I have a question for you, Bryan, and I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but just in general, I mean, COVID is such a big part of our lives now and has been for so long. How has COVID changed the way you communicate doing your job, and I guess, how has communication changed within radio due to COVID? Our benefits, drawbacks, lessons learned, that kind of type thing. What give us that kind of snapshot.
Well, for myself, I've been in this blasted basement for 18 months. I used to travel 3 days a week because the whole state's my territory, and that was the biggest change for me. I'm trying to think. Since guidelines loosened up, I've probably had 10 face-to-face appointments. It's just like I'm sure you folks are finding your all's day-to-day. It's Zoom and digital and phone calls. With radio, our folks are actually broadcasting when things were at their height and really strict. Our on-air folks were doing everything from home. We had an engineer that made the rounds, and there's a lot of our folks were doing their air shift from a closet in their house. And thank goodness with new technology, where it was seamless after a bit, and the listening audience couldn't tell. But I've been to one of our facilities in 18 months, and for a meeting, and I didn't have to go. I just was stir crazy and wanted to go. But that's been the biggest for me. And it's and talking about communicate, I think in some ways this may be the new normal. It's there's some businesses I'd hate to be in the commercial real estate business right now, because I think a lot of businesses have found out that they don't need those big block and mortar buildings that they're paying a lot of money from when their folks can be productive from home.
That was going to be kind of sort of my follow-up question. I assume the radio is still effectively doing what it's supposed to do, and you are effectively doing what you're supposed to do. So how much of this is going to continue moving forward? Our
stations are, with a lot of them being university based, I think maybe they have a little bit different view on things than a commercial operation would. But I think at every one of those stations, it's voluntary now, whether you want to do your job from at home or from the office. And the thing I miss most is the interaction. You get so many good ideas that are outside of a meeting. And every seminar I've ever been to in my life, the gem that I mined out of it happened in the hallway waiting to go into a session. And it just, I miss that part. But I don't know if we'll ever go back 100%. It's just a new game.
Excellent.
Brian,
Thank you.
would you give me your phone number, please, or anybody that may want to call you?
Yeah, it's 270-572-6005.
And that is on his contact information on the PowerPoint. And I will post the PowerPoint to our website and send out a blast email next week once I get it done. So everybody will have access if you missed that. But
David, before we close, would you bring us up to date? You probably have a few more details than I do on the awards luncheon, where it stands.
I sure will. So I am still hoping to get registration out this week. I am actually working the state fair on Friday. So if I don't, I'm going to get it out first thing next week. But our award ceremony is going to be September 23rd. That is a Thursday. It is tentatively scheduled right now for 11:30 to 1:30. If we do it in person, it will be at the Sauer Building. We have that reserved. We will provide lunch for attendees. That's why we're doing registration, so we know how much food to buy. If something comes up, we will do it the same day on Zoom. The time may change just a little bit because we won't need as much time, won't have to stop to eat lunch, that kind of type thing. But the award ceremony is going to be September 23rd, Thursday, and it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 11:30 to 1:30 based on whether it's in person or it's virtual. And the registration will open, if not the end of this week, first thing next week. Also, the fall conference. We are still having a fall conference. I actually have a graphic I'll post, but it is still going to be October 15th, which is a Friday. The Save the State still stands. The time, we don't know for sure on. It is going to be virtual. It will be on Zoom. And we're going to play with the agenda a little bit and see where we go from there. But that's pretty much all the details I have on that as well.
I'm so sorry that COVID has reared its head again, but we can only do what we can do, and it's not just us. Again, we have a new slate of folks coming on board. We need some nominations. We need you, if you want to throw your name in the hat, say, yeah, I like this organization, what it does for communicators, and I'd like to lend a hand. Maybe you want to take it a slightly different direction. You're more than welcome. You just respond to the interests of the members and have at it. But we would certainly like to hear from you. Regina would, I would, David would, and we'll just need to hear from you if you want to nominate yourself or somebody you work with or another member. Let us know, because we really are looking forward to some good people coming up for this year's or next year's board. I have nothing further. And Bryan, I thank you a million for coming on board, sharing about public radio.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Bryan. Appreciate so much. Again, I will take the PowerPoint, which includes Bryan's contact information. I will get it posted to our website. I will send out a follow-up email and let everybody know when that is available. And I do not have any information on our next Lunch and Learn. So our next thing that we will be doing will be the award ceremony next month. So I have nothing else.
All right. Thanks
Thank
everyone
you.
for coming. Keep in touch.
Thank you,
Thanks a
Bryan.
lot.
Thanks everyone for showing up. Have
Thank
a
you
great
all.
day.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Smith, cool.